This is the award-winning Lee Pitts Live.
Brought to you by the North Law Firm. For car accidents and negligent security cases, call Joe at 239-337-1191. By Crime Stoppers of Southwest Florida. Report crimes and get paid with nobody knowing your identity. 1-800-700-TIPS. And by Lee Health. Southwest Florida, welcome to another edition of Lee Pitts Live. So excited that you stayed with us. I hope you've been enjoying our stay here at the United Way here in Southwest Florida, who's doing just a fantastic job in getting people all types of social service benefits that they need. We're thrilled to be here and enjoy the pleasures of being at the United Way. We have just an outstanding show in store for you today. We got a full deck, got a band here, the whole works. Get a chance to talk to Dr.John Plump. He's the author of Tragedy to Triumph, Urban School Transformation. Get to learn all about his work in the field. Girl Talk will be here, Tashika Perry. She'll get a chance to interview a guest. We'll also get a chance to see the collaboration band. You've been hearing them play. We'll get to talk to the band and look at something from their performance. All that's taking place right here on Lee Pitts Live. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Southwest Florida. So thrilled to welcome Dr. John Plump here, the fabulous author. Good to get you on the show, man. First of all, I want to congratulate you and thank you for taking on such a important topic and being able to break it down in a Sesame Street way that everybody could understand and relate to this fabulous book that you've written. I hope that every educator around the world reads this book, because when I was reading it, all that information that you were saying in there and those tips and solutions to inner city schools and urban schools, I could relate to it because I came out of one. And in Birmingham, Alabama, of course, you're from Birmingham. I need to let people know you're all the way here from Birmingham. And then that's that. So that's right. It was like a personal experience. Tell us, what is Tragedy to Triumph?
Well, Lee, Tragedy to Triumph is the first book that I've written that composes a wealth of my ideas and strategies and techniques and perspectives on how to be able to educate students that reside in the urban communities. And the purpose of the book was to chronicle my story and my experiences as an educator, which at this particular time spans 27 years. Mm-hmm. We're talking about time as a classroom teacher, an assistant principal, an alternative school principal, an acting principal, an educational consultant, a football coach, a softball coach. So I've been at a variety of levels in the educational spectrum. Mm-hmm. But the purpose of the book was to actually highlight a lot of the techniques that I used as a classroom teacher, so teachers will know how to correlate the curriculum. Teachers will know how to have the right kind of disposition in the classroom when teaching, because all of those things are very important, especially when you're talking about educating students that don't come from popular academic backgrounds.
Mm-hmm. Let's just be clear on this. We're talking about kids. Many of them come from the inner city. They come from poor family structures. Many of them don't have parents who've actually even gone to college or finished high school. In my case, my mom nor my dad finished high school. Just letting people know this as a part of this discussion. My mom went to the 9th grade. My dad went to the 3rd grade, but they produced me, and here I am. And some of the techniques and things that you laid out in this book are exactly what my parents did to allow me to become a productive citizen. Before we go any farther, though, I can't have you coming on the show outdressing me. I know you're a man of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Well, thank you, brother. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Never outdress the host of the show, okay?
Well, I apologize this time.
All right, bro. Tell me, how did you first say, I need to take pen, put it to pad, and put what I've learned, my experiences, into a wonderful book like you just did?
Well, of course, being a traditional educator, you're either going to be strong about reading, and strong about writing. And I've always been a writer all the way back to my adolescent years, all the way up to present. So the fact that I've always recorded and chronicled my experiences as a classroom teacher, my experiences as far as dealing with my students. I taught American history, American government, and psychology as a classroom teacher. So I always had to be on top of my game. So there were just certain kind of specialized ideas and strategies that I would use, but I always would document those. And then over a period of time, when I started thinking about how could I actually get these ideas on the scaffold, how could I get these ideas where other teachers, other educators could find an opportunity to be able to implement some of these things that I knew was working with my students. I knew that these techniques and strategies were motivating and inspiring my students to aspire to greatness.
When you first started dealing with your students, though, you came into the classroom having high expectations of your students. You talk about that in your book. Talk about the importance of a teacher having high expectations for all students.
Well, Lee, it starts with standards. Every teacher should have a standard and a benchmark and a hierarchy of expectation for their children. And when you have that kind of expectation for your children, the students feel convicted. They feel as though they are going to be a part of the process, and they know that the teacher has confidence in them. So that develops the same type of confidence in themselves, and then they're able to latch on to the teacher's instructional style. They're able to see value in the way in which the teacher is disseminating instruction, the posture of the teacher, the way the teacher articulates the King's English, the way that the teacher actually describes her presentations. All of those things carry weight in a classroom, especially when you're dealing with urban students who are really what we call right brain learners. That means that they're visualistic. That means that they operate at a high level when they actually can see the things that you're expecting them to understand cognitively.
How do you define urban student?
An urban student is a student that should have goals and aspirations, but also a student that might have been disenfranchised at some point in time. However, with the right kind of innovation, the right type of experience, the right type of professional that's standing before them, teaching all areas of the curriculum, that child can go on to do great things. As a matter of fact, the greatest people to ever live came out of the urban school spectrum. You're one of them.
Right, I appreciate that. You talk about Oprah Winfrey in your book, and it was really interesting, and I agree with you 100% in the way you laid this out. Share that with our TV audience.
Well, in my book, I mentioned Oprah Winfrey and her willingness to fund a school over in South Africa. It's called OLAG. And she founded that school for South African girls because she recognized that they embraced the knowledge, that they embraced wisdom, and they really were serious about trying to better themselves. So I mentioned in the book about Oprah Winfrey's philanthropic efforts to highlight the fact that if American students, urban students, can have the same type of adoration and the same type of appreciation for education, then I'm sure other philanthropists all across the United States will be able to donate their funds in order to be able to create a dynamic opportunity from a learning perspective.
You created an education equation. Expound. What is it?
Well, it's called E3 plus A plus R equals learning. I was not a great mathematician, but I was always intrigued by the way in which the equations looked on the paper. Like on the front of my book, I have some equations on the book, on the title, but E3 plus A plus R equals learning says that there are 5 different dynamics to teaching that all instructional leaders must implement. 1E stands for explanation. That's probably the most archaic and old form of teaching. When you were in school, when I was in school, the teacher would stand before you and articulate different facts, different ideas, and different idioms. That has its place, but that has really become outdated. Now, the next E is engagement. We want students to become actual participants in the lesson. We want them to be a part of the learning process. And not only should the students be a part of the learning process, but as the teacher facilitates that endeavor, he or she is also a part of that process. The last E is exploration. Now that we're in the 21st century, students have to be introduced to concepts each and every class session. When teachers are introducing new concepts Students are exploring the lesson and finding new ways to be able to analyze and process information. The A stands for application,
Okay.
which means that students have the opportunity to be able to showcase what it is that they've been taught. And the R stands for reflectivity. That means that they're going to be able to always communicate and articulate what was learned in the learning process. And I believe that all students will learn when all 5 of those are implemented to fidelity.
What are the most pressing skills that trends that you're seeing in the 21st century that we need?
In the 21st century, Lee, in order for urban students to be able to be proficient, number one, they must have intrinsic motivation. That is just so very important. Having the innermost desire to be successful, the innermost desire to learn all that there is to learn. That's very important. Number two, the students have to make sure that they are culturally proficient. Tupac said, the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. The darker the flesh, the deeper the roots. It is very important that students know who they are. Kumo D said in one of his songs, he said that one of the greatest calamities is to drive a big car and live bourgeois and not know who you are. Cultural proficiency is very important for our students. Number three, bilingualism. It is imperative that our young people understand speaking more than one language. 4, students have to be technologically literate. And lastly, they have to make sure that they are a career programmer. That means that they outline what it is that they want to do with their life in order to be successful.
The book is Tragedy to Triumph, the Urban School Transformation. How can people get your book? We have your website appearing on the screen. Is that the best place to go? Go to
Best
that website?
place right now is to go to the website, johnplump.com.
Okay. Who is the audience for your book? Who should have your book?
Number one, teachers. Teachers need the book because educators need to truly understand in the 21st century that it is a certain kind of artistic disposition attached to teaching students in today's society. Many of our young people come from a variety of backgrounds that sometimes diminish and limit their ability to be taught from a traditional perspective.
Can white teachers teach black students and Hispanic students? Do you feel that a certain ethnic group, you talk about in your book, is more culturally sensitive? Go.
Of course. White teachers have always been able to teach African American students. The key element is making sure that Caucasian teachers, white teachers, have the strategies, that they understand hip hop. For example, hip hop in my book stands for high intellectual performance and high operating performance. It's imperative that teachers of white descent understand hip hop, embrace it, and recognize that it's just a part of the phenomenon of how students tick in the 21st century.
Black teachers teaching white students, same concept?
Same concept.
Culture, just know different cultures in different ways and value those cultures.
That's the bottom line.
Now, one of our good friends, he's an outstanding, one of the top basketball players to ever come out of the city of Birmingham, happened to be a member of Kappa Alpha Psi like you, Will Cottrey. He was able to take his academics and go on to get and star in basketball, but while in high school, I was a student with him in high school, he was solid in the books, and he went on to get his degree at what was then Livingston and became an All-American. My point is, inner city, the emphasis on sports, and how that and academics will work together in the urban communities. Go.
Well, the key element is recognizing that scholastics and athletics are intertwined. They actually interrelate with one another. As a matter of fact, if you study the history of Paul Robeson or Jim Brown, they were scholars and academicians simultaneously while being great athletes. So a lot of times we just have to do a better job of regurgitating for our culture the individuals that balance the act of academics and athletics. And when we do that and put more emphasis on that, then students will really be student athletes, not just in name only, but in practice as well.
Compare education research and education reality.
Well, Lee, educational research became very real to me when I was writing my dissertation for my doctorate degree. And I had all of these credible authors that I had to research, and then I had to paraphrase basically what it was that they had to say about how to educate students in urban communities. Whereas from my perspective, educational reality was a little bit more abundant because I recognized that even though I was a practicing educator and a practicing administrator, there were certain kind of realistic experiences that had a little bit more value. So it's not to say that one is better than the other. I just believe that if you consider educational research, you have to also consider educational reality at the same time.
When I was reading your book, I know you said that it was for educators and people who work with students and so on and so forth. But when I was reading the book, I was thinking, and of course my son now is not growing up in the urban community. We live in the suburbs, but we're not trying to, it's good to be in the urban community. I grew up in the urban community. But when I was reading the book as a parent, not an educator, but I am an educator as a parent, I was seeing principles and ideas in here that I want to implement with my son. Go.
Well, the thing about it is to recognize.
So, and my point is, this book is good for anybody.
It's good for anybody.
Go ahead.
Anybody that has a vested interest in education. But since you mentioned about parents, because I'm a firm believer that parents are the first teachers in a child's life. I have an acronym for parents, and it stands for People Acquiring Resilient Experiences Necessary to Succeed Children. And when parents recognize their role and implement and execute their role from the beginning years, not when a student becomes an adolescent. That's one of the greatest misnomers in education. A lot of times we feel as though we got to start motivating students when they're at the time when they've already been influenced by the streets. They've already been influenced by their friends and their cohorts and those that they've grown up with. We have to do a better job of reading the literature as far as what it takes to motivate children and get them geared to appreciating education.
Tragedy to Triumph, the urban school transformation should be required reading to me for all principals, counselors, teachers, students, and parents. They're all stakeholders. Why?
They're all stakeholders because we all should operate as a team. When I was playing football, a football coach used to always tell us that team stood for together everyone achieves more. But in the academic realm, when you're talking about parents, teachers, students, principals, and teachers, if they're all working on the same team, the acronym stands for Together Excellence and Achievement Matters.
Dr. Plump, we're just fortunate to have you here in society in the 21st century. I'm encouraging everybody to go and research that book and get it. And we're going to certainly get you back here on the show in the future. But I want you to congratulate you and thank you for putting out such a great document that could change the way we educate in America and around the world. Congratulations on a great book.
Thank you so much, Lee.
We look forward to getting you back in the future.
Thank you so much.
I want people to also know you got more than one book out. Plug the other book.
My second book is called Pushing for Proficiency, the Teacher's Instructional Highway. And in this book, what I do is take every component of education from a question perspective, and then I provide a rationale and answer for that question. So we're talking about from classroom management to curriculum to 21st century instruction, from discipline, from parental involvement to athletics, scholastics, all of those things.
Keep on doing it, my friend.
Thank you,
As the
brother.
saying goes on this particular show, for those who say it can't be done, they're usually interrupted by those like the great Dr. Plump, who has penned a best-selling book, who are doing it. When we come back, Girl Talk with Tashika Perry.